We're live right now, TRadioV.com. That's Radio NTV. That's where we're broadcasting from. The phone lines are open as well. 855-878-4652 is the number to dial. That's 878-4652. 855-878-4652. Call us. We got a great topic. Before I get to the topics, you know what I like to do. I like to promote black businesses. You know, we got We Juice in the building. Ramo Mart, WeJuice.com. That's where you go to get these freshly prepared juices by our in-house, nutritionist specialist. His name is Hassan McCullough. Great guy. Hassan Kareem McCullough. Great guy. WeJuice.com. That's not W-E, that's O-U-I. Juice.com. Please support the brother. Rita G produced this, Via Skin Science by Rita G. Please go support her movement, via skinscience.com. Please support her movement. Of course, support my movement. Listen, if you want personal life coaching from me, you want a free strategy session with me, you got to go to my website. Then you have, let me just give you the email address. Go to zowhatorders@gmail.com. I will give you a free strategy session where I will communicate, talk with you, we'll call each other, and we'll, break down whatever your particular issues are in whatever area of your life you need work. That is zowhatorders@gmail.com. The coaching strategy session is free, lasts up to 90 minutes. I'll sit there and we'll work through it. Let's talk about it if you're serious. Coaching by Zoe Williams. Please support that movement. zowhatorders@gmail.com. Free coaching strategy session. Now, CD Baby. Go to CD Baby to pick up my lecture on God, the God Class Volume 1. Very interesting philosophical, musical, spiritual experience on this thing. Okay? I want you to go there right now. cdbaby.com. Zoe what? That's my thing right there. The Street Scholar, the God Class Volume 1. Go to CD Baby, support that. IamZoeWilliams.com is my website. We have 59 T-shirts. We have a few 6XLs, a few 4XLs, a few double XLs. We have sizes for women, all of that. Please go there, support the movement right now. Only 59 pieces, and they're going to be gone. Go there, support that. Also, Real Influence and Just Listen are two books that are authored by Dr. Mark Goulston. If you don't think Dr. Mark Goulston has impact, you on the finest cocaine money can buy. These books are amazing, and the impact of these books are undeniable. We got a young man in here right now from Detroit who read the book. It's a brother, 24 years old, 23 years old, something like that. I'm telling you, these books are for real. Go support Dr. G. Real Influence, Just Listen. And Dr. G is big enough that you can just Google him. Just Google him. That's how big he is. I don't even have to give his website. Google me, bitch. I'm sorry. Dr. G, right? Of course, Real Men Don't Play, Bobby Glanton-Smith. Go get his book. Go support his movement right now. Today's topic and show is going to be bananas. Do we have Veronica Conway online? Veronica.
Yes, sir.
What are we supporting and promoting right now?
We are supporting we're doing a call this week, it could be today, for the G8 Intensive. That's letter G, number 8. As you know, though, during the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur Boot Camp, we closed a little over $300,000 in business in about 6 hours.
Wow.
We are not playing on the business front. And so we're going to be doing an accelerated version of that in December. And so if you want to get more information about the call, the training call, the free training call that we're going to be doing, you can email me at veronicaconway.com and just put in the subject line G8.
And you know what's crazy about Veronica? I keep telling people she's my personal coach. She reached out to me and was like, look, I see that you're coaching, but you as a coach need to be coached. And when I tell you this woman is no joke, I mean, she coached the likes of Iyanla Van Zant. She created a neurolinguistic program that undoes Willie Lynch. I mean, come on. Undoes colorism, undoes all types of limiting beliefs. This woman is a powerhouse. I ain't gonna let nobody inside my head unless they're qualified to be in there. It's a mess in there. She was able to come in and redecorate like this. This couch is ugly over here, right? I'm just telling you, she's cold piece of work now. Listen, you gotta support her movement. Once again, how do they connect?
They can just email me at veronicaconway.com and put in the subject line G8, and I will let them know when the next free training call is for business. This is all about business and how to generate more economic empowerment in the Black community by doing leveraged business. And we are not kidding. We make money. We make real money.
Yeah, she's about it. She's about it. We appreciate the call. Who else do we have? Do we have anybody else? Okay, so let's go to the websites real quick. I want to promote ramomart.com. I promote this brother all the time. He's 28 years old. High-end fashion designer out of New York. He's incredible. You got to support his stuff. That's the only way we're going to make a dent in anything. We have to support our own. Recycling of Black dollars. This brother right here, his website does not do justice to all the high-end materials and things that he produces. I mean, wedding gowns, high-end ball stuff, tuxedos, blazers, button-downs, scarves, ties, belts, accessories, shoes. The dude is crazy. A lot of people don't know about him. Sisters and brothers, go to ramomart.com and support this brother's movement. Very, very incredible stuff. Go to Arise Hospitality, the Black Staples. Anything you can get at Staples or Office Depot or Office Max, you can get it here. Please support this business. It's all Black owned, right? Recycling of Black dollars. That's what we're trying to do here. Hip Loose. Go to hiploose.com. These guys are professional tailors. They are the ones who tailored my line of suits. My line of suits will be coming out 2015. You'll be able to buy suits from Zoe Williams, the line of succession. High-end tailored fashion. I expect Dr. G to buy a suit. I expect Bobby to get a suit. I expect Bryan Franklin to get a suit from the Zoe What line. It's going to be incredible. I've worn some of the suits on the show. Easy Boy Web. Go to easyboyweb.com. Now, their website is cool, but go to IamZoeWilliams.com and you can see their work. They did my website. Go to IamZoeWilliams.com so you can see the website design that they did for me. These guys are incredible. You need web stuff done. You need your website icy. You need your website designed to your specifications. You need your website to have commerce and all of that stuff inbuilt. These guys are great. Can you scroll a little bit? Give them a little taste of what's happening. There we go. Yeah. These brothers are cold. EasyBoyWeb.com. Located in Atlanta, Georgia. But, nowadays, space and time doesn't mean anything. It's digital. You can connect with them. EasyBoyWeb.com. I appreciate that. Listen, we're about to take a quick break. When we come back, topics, guests, it's about to get bananas. I'll be back at 2.2. So what mornings? Oh!
And one of the greatest tragedies in life is getting to the end of your life and looking back and realizing it was mediocre and it didn't have to be that way. The number one reason is people are unwilling to listen and care about what's important to the other person. But what if you could be someone who dared to care about everybody in your life? When you're in love, smoke gets in your eyes. But when you're anxious, you talk more than you listen. I asked my wife a month ago, I said, I don't know whether to have an affair or buy a motorcycle. And she said, if you have an affair, I'll kill you. If you get the motorcycle, you'll kill yourself. Go with the bike.
Beautiful music, Doc.
Lovely music, lovely music. I hope you like my baritone. I'm finishing up a flute here. Today we're going to be talking about kind of how to man up, how to be a man, how to be an effective black man in the world. I'll try and weigh in and hopefully add some value. And I like these kind of acronyms. And so I have an acronym for today, and the acronym is PFF. What PFF stands for is prioritize, focus, and follow through. Prioritize, focus, and follow through. I did a webinar for a black wealth management company, and you can go to webinar follow through Goulston. You'll find it, and it was about how do you follow through, because follow through means never having to say you're sorry, and a lot of people just don't do it. And I talk about integrity, and the definition of integrity is doing what you say you'll do when you say you'll do it, and at the first sign that you won't be able to do it, you contact everyone that it negatively affects, and you fix it so that you don't leave them hanging. But if you can prioritize, focus, and follow through, you can man up anywhere you want to be.
And with that said, Dr. G sets us up with the relationship toolbox for today's topic. Today's topic, MAN, acronym, Manifest Answers Now. Solutions for teaching black men how to live/cope with life in America. This is going to be a tough topic because with everything that's going on, of course, Eric Garner, what's my young brother in Cleveland that was killed, 12 years old. Tamir?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's Johnson.
We can keep going. Oscar Grant. We can keep naming names. Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown. We can keep going, right? This isn't the first, and this ain't going to be the last. What about the little 7-year-old girl, right? That cop was acquitted too, who killed the little girl because he went into somebody's house looking for somebody else, killed the little girl while she was asleep, 7-year-old girl, right? But I mean, we really got to deal with this. So that's why it's important, because how should African-American men act? If the police, right, are, in my opinion, policing a stereotype, right? Who was the name of that one rogue black cop that just went on a rampage a few months ago, right? Last year sometime. Dorner, right? Just went wild. It was one of him, right? What if it was 12? They wouldn't have been, they damn near couldn't pin him down. If it was 12 of them, then I can understand, okay, we got real trouble, right? But guess what? I could, in a way, see why the police would be scared of him. His training, right? He was better trained than the police that were looking for him, right? Why do police officers in America seemingly view all black men like Dorner? It doesn't matter what walk of life they're from. It doesn't matter education, socioeconomic positioning. They see all black men, seemingly, as a type of Dorner. Remember Christopher Dorner? That was his name, right? I think it's something that we need to deal with here. We've got a lot of people on. Bobby G, Bryan Franklin. What's your name, young man?
Derek Carrington.
Derek Carrington, friend of Dr. Mark G. Dr. Mark brought him in. Dr. G is in the building right now. Of course, on Skype. Let me name everybody that's here. We've got legendary Jim Brown on the line. And we've got Tim Wise on Skype. We've got Veronica Conway on the line. Let's bring in Jim Brown because we know he has to run. His time is limited. Brother Brown, thank you so much for making the time for us. We know you're very busy. We know you're traveling. Brother, please, can you give us some insight for how black men should appropriate themselves in America's modern day society when the police are profiling in the way that they are right now? How should we behave?
Well, first of all, you have to know the history of this country as a black man and understand that this country profited through slavery, the humiliation of black people, the prostitution of black people, They made a lot of money off black people. So the economy of this country was built around exploitation of black people, and particularly black men. We've never had an apology. There's never been any point where we have addressed it properly to educate our youngsters on just what we are facing. So I blame a lot on our intelligence and the way that we use our intelligence, because we have powerful black men in this country who are satisfied with the fact that they are rich and they are popular. But in America, if you're black and you're rich and you're popular, you're probably doing something wrong.
Wow. 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 Okay. Okay.
So let me just say this. I don't want to try to dominate your program, but here's the situation. In the 60s, black men in America worked together. We all had maybe different philosophies, but we all knew that we were men, not second-class citizens. We demanded our rights. Those of us who were activists were not interested in integration. We were interested in our constitutional rights. So our cry was we will work together. We are American citizens. We pay our taxes, and we demand our rights. Okay, what you have are elements of our society that takes advantage of that and give the enemy an excuse when we break the windows and turn the cars over and do all the things that people can point out and say, see, that's what we're talking about. But that's not what we're talking about. A crime is a crime. A prisoner is a prisoner. A citizen is a citizen. And if you keep it very technical and demand your rights as a collective group, point out the facts that we have allowed you to benefit through our enslavement, you have not apologized, you have not educated yourself to that particular fact. And now we have a situation in the streets where people, most of them don't have jobs anymore because the jobs are dried up. The economy is not what it should be for black people ever. The equal opportunity is not there. So therefore, you have those who have the excuse of all of that. But then you have those who can reason that we are not getting our fair shake of the cake. Mm-hmm. So I'll let someone comment on my opening statement.
Hey, Jim, this is Bobby, and I want to thank you for taking out the time and get past that and get into the crux of why Zoe asked me to reach out to you to come on the show. You've just basically laid out the problems. What are some of the answers as it relates to the work that you're doing and have been doing most of your life?
Well, I mentioned, Bobby, earlier, the collective efforts of black men, particularly black men. When we were in the 60s and we worked together, we adopted Marshall County, Mississippi. We started over 400 black businesses. We worked together. We called a summit for Muhammad Ali when they were going to railroad him when he refused to go into the service because of his religious beliefs. So what we need today is to revisit back to the days when black men worked together, cooperated together. Even though we might have a little different philosophy, it all ends up the same way when we demand our constitutional rights. And we all point out that we are tax-paying citizens, and it isn't integration that we're looking for. It is equal rights that we're looking for. And all we want to be is a normal citizen that get treated just like anyone else. And so when I deal with any young people today, I try to bring them into a collective group that can intelligently approach the situation and not get caught up where we can be railroaded and arrested and charged with crimes we shouldn't be charged with. So we have to realize the reality of the black male, the threat of the black male, and the characteristic of those who were in the ruling body, and the danger and the threats that they feel from the emerging of what I would call the talented black male influence.
So, Jim, we're going to take a short break, and out of the break, Jim, I want you to talk a little bit about the American program.
If you could stay with us, we'd appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to introduce Tim Wise as well. Man, it's about to get hot in here. Manifest Answers Now is the topic. We'll be back in a second.
No indictment in the death of Eric Garner. A grand jury in New York City has decided not to charge a white New York City police officer in the death of an unarmed African-American man.
I don't know. I honestly don't know what to say. If comedy is tragedy plus time, I need more time. But I would really settle for less tragedy, to be honest with you. You know, I think what is so utterly depressing is that none of the ambiguities that existed in the Ferguson case exist in the Staten Island case. And yet the outcome is exactly the same. No crime, no trial, all harm, no foul. In Ferguson, at least you had conflicting witness testimony, you had conflicting forensics, you had the specter, at least, of police self-defense. But here, there is none of that. The coroner called it a homicide. The guy's not acting threatening, and we know that not through witness testimony, unreliable bystanders, but because we are watching it. Someone taped it. A couple of days ago, the White House proposed more cameras on cop vests as a solution to this type of violence. I assume that the solution they're proposing, if implemented, would look something like the Eric Garner case.
I said, Chip, no! Chip, don't do it! It was too late. He was walking over there. This man was high as shit. Excuse me. Excuse me, sir. Touching him and shit. Excuse me. Need some information. Start confessing things you shouldn't confess. I'm a little high.
We're back. The So What Morning Show. You know white people have a different experience with police than black people do. Bobby, talk to us right now. Let's get Jim on.
Hey, Jim, what can an organization like American, the American program do to affect positive change in the present climate that we have in America today? Give me a brief answer in terms of what you think American brings to the table.
Well, Bobby, American over the last 20 years have brought together particularly black men and black people to fight for our freedom, equality, and justice, and to truly concentrate on our neighborhoods, to make our neighborhoods safer, to take care of our mothers, our aunts, our sisters, our wives, our girlfriends, our children, and to make sure that they get a quality education. It is one thing to, of course, protest. It's one thing to demand your rights. It's another thing to really set a foundation wherein your community can be the cleanest community in the doggone country. It can be the safest community in the country. And we have to get rid of those black men that feel that becoming predators in their own neighborhoods will be offset because they can now look at the police. The police is no excuse for our behavior. And if our behavior is correctly, we will make the police pay because we will have the political power, the economic power, and the collective manpower to do something about it. But until we put together that kind of foundation and that kind of action group, then we're going to be victims because we can't just scream and holler and hope that the media puts it on and that that's going to bring about change. We have to systematically come together, deal with the fact that we're going to look at our neighborhoods first, and then when we collectively work on our neighborhood and we stand as that example, we can politically and economically attack the system and those in the system that are not carrying out the laws properly.
Hey, Jim, we got
That's the way I look at it.
Thank you so much. Jim, there's a gentleman that Zoe wants to introduce right now to you and to the audience listening.
Listen, we've got a powerful guest to join Brother Jim Brown on this show. His name is Tim Wise. He is the author of many books. He's been teaching for over 20 years. You know, and what I like is Cornel West calls him a vanilla brother in the tradition of abolitionist John Brown. He's been teaching anti-racism. a white man. He's been teaching on white privilege. I mean, this is a very powerful brother. Anybody who's ever heard him speak knows this guy right here is no joke. He is well informed, he is articulate, and he has knowledge that will shift your perspective when we start looking at race in America. Dr. G, I know you had a question that you wanted to pose to Tim Brown. Could you, Tim Wise?
I have a question for Jim and
Tim.
Tim.
Welcome, Tim. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Hey, thanks for being patient with Brother Jim. We all on together right now. Dr. Mark Goulston has a question.
Yeah, Jim, you mentioned that blacks have not received a authentic apology, and I'm white. And what kind of apology could we give you that would make a difference? Because to me, an apology with regret and no remorse is insulting. And until the pain of someone else causes us pain.
I'll put it to you this way. When you add your concept to it, then I really can't respond. But if I tell you the context of what I call an apology is the first step in admitting you were wrong, and that you are then willing to do something about it. So the reality in this country, there are people that are white that are willing to apologize and willing to do something about it, and they have always been that element within our society. So for me to pretend that it's only black people that are going to be the ones to address this correctly, that would be not correct.
Yeah, Tim, can you weigh in?
My answer to that is that I love a person that will say to me, I was wrong, now what can I do to make things better and make things right?
Wow, that's a good point.
That's a key element.
Yeah.
Tim, could you weigh in on that? And
Sure. I mean, I think apologies without recompense are pretty meaningless. So I think if we're going to move forward as a country, the country has to not only apologize as a nation and the institutions within that society and those of us who have benefited directly or indirectly from those institutions, but we also have to be very serious about creating compensation and recompense for that injury. You know, we did that after World War II with our enemies. We rebuilt countries with which we had been at war. We did this and should have done it far earlier for those Japanese Americans who were interned during World War II. So we have a history of examples where we have made right our wrongs, at least in part, not just with a I'm sorry, but also with real money, with real investment. And we still haven't done that with regard to the enslavement and segregation of African-descended peoples or the theft of indigenous land. You know, a casino is not compensation for what's done to our indigenous brothers and sisters. So I think we need apologies with recompense. And let me also say this, the other side of the apology, I think white folks need to thank black and brown people. It's not just about apologizing for what was done to them. It's thanking them for demonstrating over hundreds of years how to survive and thrive and persevere in the face of marginalization and oppression. That is a serious human lesson. And were it not for black and brown people, this country wouldn't exist. There would have been no revolution without the money that was created off the backs of black people. So if we love our country, and God knows white folks love this country, at least we say we do, that we ought to be thanking the people who made it possible for us to even have a country. So it's both about an apology and recompense, but also a nice thank you would be sweet.
Wow.
That would be good too.
Wow.
Thank you.
I have a very...
Well, gentlemen, can I have my last say?
Yes, absolutely, Brother Jim. Come on.
I only have one more statement to make, and I have to leave. I'm sorry.
That's all right, brother.
Bobby. It's the conversation. If you give a sentence, or you lay a sentence out of a paragraph, and it's true, but it isn't the whole truth, it's difficult for us to respond because there isn't that much time. But let me just say this. I always found that if I look at myself first and what I can do, I always got better results. If I look at my people first and what we can do, I'm sure we can get tremendous results. So in this conversation, my greatest worry is not the white man or slavery or all the things that's been done to us. It's really about what we do to each other. And if I am not secure in sending my wife at 12 o'clock at night into Watts to deliver a message to my friends, then something is wrong.
Wow.
And it might be wrong with me, but something is wrong if I know that she will not be safe. What I'd like to see is that those of us who are so-called, call ourselves black men, let's make our communities, let's make our people, let's make our children the safest and the most well-protected in the world against any force, any negative force, against the police, the government, or anyone, because if we take care of our business in our communities, there's no way that any element will be able to penetrate that and to get away with the things that bad people have been getting away with.
Wow.
So I got to leave you guys. I've got to get out of here. Thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jim.
Talk to you when you get back in town, man.
All right, so listen, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, more Tim Wise. And Tim, when we come back, I want you to field this question. How is racism different from white supremacy? A lot of times, I think black people don't know what forces are at work. And it could be unconscious forces, in my opinion. I don't think we're very knowledgeable of the difference between racism, or what is the definition of racism. When we come back, Tim Wise is going to go deeper into that. Listen, So What Morning Show's T-Radio V, that's Radio NTV. We'll be back in 2.2 with more Tim Wise in the panel.
Come on, people. Won't anyone admit this is symptomatic of a larger issue?
Joining me now is Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. I think there's something bigger than just the individual circumstances.
Thank you, Rand Paul. Here's a Republican who has been making an effort to reach out to the black community. He's been talking about voting rights and criminal justice. So this is a start. Give it to us straight. What is the larger issue here?
Some politician put a tax of $5.85 on a pack of cigarettes. So they've driven cigarettes underground by making them so expensive. But then some politician also had to direct the police to say, hey, we want you arresting people for selling a loose cigarette.
What the are you talking about? Well, I guess now we know what it takes for a senator from Kentucky to admit cigarettes can kill. I don't know what to say. I appreciate the purity of your anti-tax dogma, but the cigarette tax is truly the least salient aspect of this case. It's like saying, the problem with the Hindenburg? Government parking regulations, that's it. You got Big Brother over your shoulder going, everybody's got a dock.
See, young people, social media is a great thing, but the enemy got you with the social media. I'm on Facebook, and I have 500 followers. I'm imitating you. And what are you saying on Facebook? Well, I'm telling you, if it was me, you understand? In fact, if they come down with the wrong decision, here's what I'm going to do. And you and your 500 friends agree. The National Security Agency of the United States government got you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're back. The So What Morning Show. Everybody's here right now. We've got Geoff Brown, Mark Goulston, Bryan Franklin, oneeyemall.com. We've got Bobby Glanton-Smith, and on Skype, we've got famed author Tim Wise.
Wow.
Tim, please
Yes.
talk to me, man, about the difference between racism and white supremacy.
Okay. Well, the way I think about it is this. That racism is a generic brand or a generic product name, and white supremacy is the brand name with the largest market share, right? So what I mean by that is racism is this very generic thing, and around the world, you could have various forms of it. based on the domination of one group by another group. But white supremacy is far and away. It's the Charmin of toilet paper, right? It's the one. It's the Coca-Cola of cola, right? So there might be other forms throughout history, but none of them have rivaled in size and scope, quantity or quality of impact white supremacy. White supremacy is just a specific form of racism, and it is by far the one that is most present on the planet in society after society. Yeah.
Would you say white supremacy is a type of terrorism?
Oh, sure. If you think about even just the State Department's definition of terrorism, which, is problematic, I'm sure, in a number of ways. But even if we just look at the United States State Department definition of terrorism, it's basically politically motivated violence. Right, so violence with a particular political motivation to bring about certain political outcomes. Well, there's no doubt that white supremacy as a tool has been the use of politically motivated violence to bring about certain outcomes. First, the theft of indigenous land. Second, the theft of African labor. Third, the exploitation of Chinese labor, using them to build the railroads of the transcontinental economy in this country, the theft of half of Mexico in a war of aggression that this country started. All of that is imperialism and terrorism using the United States government's own definition of it. So historically, we know that's true. And I would say even today that white supremacy operates on the basis of terror, whether that's in the United States with policing, over-policing and brutality in communities of color, or whether that's bombing campaigns against mostly populations of and communities of color around the planet. So I don't see how there can be any doubt, using the government's own definition, that it's terrorism.
Bobby?
Yeah, Tim, I got a quick question for you. A lot of times in my lifetime, I grew up in the South, people were referred to as white sympathizers who tend to favor our condition, our plight. How do you define yourself?
Well, white sympathizer was the nice way they put it in the South, right? That's not the way they all.
It was a nigger lover. It was a nigger lover. You want to just cut to the chase.
Right.
Yeah, that's what they said. You nigger lover.
Yeah.
Burn him too. The terminology that I use is aspiring ally, and I say aspiring ally because, like a lot of folk of color have been talking about in the wake of the jury verdict, and I've been using this term for a while, but as they have reminded us in the wake of Ferguson, in the wake of the Eric Garner jury in Staten Island, ally is a verb. Solidarity is a verb. It's not just a noun. So I say aspiring ally because as a white person doing this work, I am trying to be in solidarity with folks of color who have always led this work and by necessity must continue to lead the work. So not sympathizer, but ally and aspirationally such, because I know that as a white person doing the work, I'm going to make mistakes because I have privilege. Even just the fact that I get as much attention as I do for the work I do is about privilege. That's not because I'm the greatest speaker or the greatest writer. I am, as my mama said, somebody who can talk real good, but that's not enough to become prominent, to sell books, to get asked to come and speak around the country. That has a lot to do with whiteness. So I have to be humble enough to acknowledge that and to try to remember that as I do ally work, that I'm trying to work in solidarity. I'm not trying to be the biggest voice, the loudest voice. I'm just trying to add my voice to the work that people of color already are doing.
Wow. Tim, Geoff Brown, hey man, first let me say I am a huge fan of your work, and I don't know if you can
stop jocking.
Shut up. I don't know if you can somehow track your shares, your YouTube shares, but I am always blowing you up, and because you are like the Bizarro World Larry Elder. You are like the exact. I would love to get the two of you on one show. Question: What was the personal impetus to make you take up this cause, kind of like Larry Elder has taken up the cause of the downtrodden, disenfranchised white man? What from your side kind of pushed you into this?
I don't know. Maybe we were switched at birth or something. I don't know.
Right.
Great answer.
To be honest with you, and it goes back to what we were saying a second ago about growing up in the South. I actually think that white Southerners, in a weird sort of ironic way, have a greater clarity that race is an issue than white folks elsewhere. Now, that doesn't mean that white Southerners have figured it out.
That is true.
Yes. But if you're white and you grew up in the South, you cannot not know that race is the background noise of everything. So you grow up in the South. I was born in 1968. I came up in the 70s and 80s. And, you know, I went to historically black college for preschool. So my earliest childhood education was at Tennessee State.
What? Get out of here.
Uh-oh, you're going to turn Bobby on. He from Tennessee.
I'm from
Murfreesboro.
Right. So I was at TSU in 1971, 72, 4 years old. And what that meant, and I was there because my mom in particular made the decision to send me there because she wanted me to have a different kind of educational experience than she had coming up in the national schools, never having been in an integrated classroom. We were just getting ready in the early 70s to finally do busing and DSEG in Nashville. So she wanted to prepare me, and she also wanted to piss off her parents. So there's that too. But,
right.
So she sends me to Tennessee State. And the important, valuable thing about that was it meant two things. One is that my peer group early on was going to be almost exclusively black children. And I'm not saying that because I know white folks always say we have black friends and we're usually lying. I mean, like, I didn't have anything but black friends for a couple of years. And it meant that when we got into first grade, second grade, third grade, and those children who were friends of mine, who I had some connection to because I'd either gone to state with them or they looked like the kids I'd gone to state with, when they're being segregated out and given different curriculum, punished differently, right? I'm noticing that because those are my friends. Why are you putting them over there and all the white kids who I don't know, we're all over here doing the advanced level work, or we're not getting punished when we act up. So it gave me an awareness. I didn't know what that was about yet. I was 5, 6, 7 years old, but it meant that I was more likely to see it. And secondly, the women that ran that program were mostly African-American women. So if you're 3 years old, 1972, being told by black women what's what, you learn to respect black authority, and in a way that very few 3-year-old white children did then or now. And so 20 years later, when I'm doing community organizing in public housing in New Orleans, and I've got black women with whom I'm working telling me what's what, I'm not going to be the guy that says, are you sure you're not crazy? Because I think you might be seeing things, right? I'm going to be the guy who has learned to respect black and brown authority. So I have to credit my mom and the mentors that I met growing up and coming up to going to college in New Orleans, meeting mentors of color in the community who worked with me. So, you know, it's all of that. I mean, it's more complicated than that, but that's the easy answer.
Wow.
Tim, this is the doctor on the show here, the white guy.
Dr. Mark Goulston. Tell him your name.
Dr. Mark Goulston. I just want to piggyback on what you're saying because I had sort of a conversion in my mid-40s because I worked with the prosecution in the O.J. Simpson trial. I was an advisor of the prosecution, and when the not guilty verdict came down, I really had this sense of injustice, and then I went up to my black friends and I said, this is awful. I mean, it feels like life is just stacked against us and justice couldn't get a fair trial. And I thought, I'll bet you felt this, and every one of my black friends said, I've never felt any different. And I said, this feels awful. Why didn't you tell me it was so bad? And they looked right through me and said, because you didn't want to know.
Right.
And that just whipped my head around. It's one of the reasons I'm on this show. Because one thing I'm passionate about leveling...
because he liked us.
Yeah. No, I'm passionate about leveling the playing field, but I can't stand hypocrisy, especially when I discover it in myself.
Wow. Wow.
Right. Well, no, that's heavy stuff. And I think that that's the kind of thing that, you know, most white folks are not going to have that early experience that I had. And that was very rare. And I'm very fortunate to have had it. For most of us, it is going to take something that happens later that all of a sudden opens up our eyes. And part of it, for us, I think, is not just big stories like Eric Garner, like Michael Brown, like Trayvon, like OJ and other things, but it's also about learning to listen to the day-to-day stories that black colleagues tell us, that black associates tell us, being prepared to hear when people talk about their lives and start with the radical assumption, and it's not really radical, I mean to put that in quote marks, the radical assumption that people of color know their life better than we know their life. And if we start with that, we can't go wrong, because then we'll start to actually hear, not just listen, but really hear what people are talking about, and then we can start to work through some of this stuff.
Wow. So listen, really quickly, we got to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to ask a couple more questions for Tim. Tim, I have a question specifically for you. It's regarding my 17-year-old son. He's a kid. He's 17. He's a basketball star. He was raised in Inglewood, California. He's going to the University of Auburn this summer. We need tips that will prepare him for the different type of white folk that's down in the South. How do we prepare him to walk that fine line where he gets to remain true to himself, but also know where he's out of bounds with these folk? And I'm talking about racial bounds. How do we prepare young black men to live in this society when there's so many invisible pitfalls to them, man?
Yeah, they're invisible now.
They're invisible, right? We need to deal with that when we come back. 2.2 seconds.
Oh my God, how he has a rap career is beyond me. I don't get it. And he takes his shirt off. Oh my God, he looks like 50 pounds of chewed Tootsie Rolls with his... All right. Now, you are in white fashion. You know white boys always leave the house like they're going to help somebody move. To resist and defend the horrible house. There are some horrible people. And what you need to do is start policing your own. I have an American Bulldog. Scott type, for those of you who know American Bulldogs. If you come to my house and I'm dead in the wrong and I owe you $5,000 and you are well within your rights to be upset with me and you raise your voice to me, guess what? Marley, my American Bulldog, she can't count. She don't know nothing about our deal. All she know is that you are on my property fucking with me. So guess what? Even though I'm wrong, my dog will tear your ass up. That's who the police are to you. The police are the bulldogs of the elite. They are the mouth of the beast. All of your railing against them is almost futile unless you can take them over, unless you're going to cut my dog's throat. All your sit and stay and down, that has nothing to do with my dog, by the way. My dog is trained in Swahili, so sit down, stay don't mean nothing to her. So all that you saying to her don't mean shit. You need to appeal to me, the elitist. The way you appeal to your elitists is with your wallets, black people. I say it and I say it again. Our biggest problem is that whine, march, repeat. You seem to think it's somehow working. It is not. It didn't really work in the 60s. You know what worked in the 60s? Boycotts worked in the 60s. Not you are appealing to somebody who does not give a shit. No, let me go further. Does not give a flying fuck about you. Okay? This is the information age. We do not need to pull ox carts or pick cotton anymore. Therefore, regular niggas are no longer needed, which is why you are being warehoused so that we have a new slavery. It's called imprisonment. Change how you spending your money. We need to get together and somehow make a mass decision to move our money in mass. Think of my bulldog.
This is why I say the Charles Barkleys of the world, the step and fetch it, the get along, the go alongs of the world.
My heart. I love Charles Barkley.
To me, these guys are black Nazis.
Blotzies?
Because in a way, they support the white supremacist system.
Movement, of course.
So in a way, they are just as genocidal as the supremacist system that we live in, the white supremacist system.
Shade Tree House niggas.
I mean, I mean, it's heartbreaking to look at it that way. I mean, they just find so much comfort in being coddled by the system because they get a little plateau that they get to live on, away from all the other brothers and sisters that are struggling. So as long as their direct TV bill is paid, as long as their insurance is paid, as long as they are considered affluent.
They've been fooled into believing that their little bit is a lot.
Exactly. To me, you're a Negro Margaret Sanger. To me, you're
African-American.
No, Negro.
Oh, wait. All my heroes are Negroes. It's the African-American that fucked everything up.
Hey, I don't like what you're saying right now. I'm just playing. No,
Negroes.
Tim Wise. I want to come back to that point. A young African-American male from Cali. He is going to the University of Auburn.
Yes.
how does he find a balance? Because he's going to experience a different white guy than he experienced in Santa Monica, California. How would we prepare him, Tim?
Well, he's going to experience those kind of white folks that Charles Barkley experienced at Auburn. So that's what
yeah, exactly.
So you better protect him before he leaves the house. No, look, it is incredibly dangerous for me to advise a young black man on how to stay alive in a system that was set up, if for nothing else, for his destruction and the destruction of people like him. But I will say this. I think the key, and this is not just for him, I think this is true, and the research actually shows it, that the folk of color, black and brown, who come through white-dominated institutions of higher learning with the least damage, the most clear, the most competent, the most successful, the strongest, are the ones who know a couple of things. One, they know who they are, because the schools will not teach them who they really are. If anything, the schools will tell them something very different. So he has to know who he is, regardless of who the folks in Auburn, Alabama try to tell him he is, because I assure you, they will not be, by and large, white aspiring allies. I know enough about the community to know that. Number two, he has to know the system he is in, because, again, the school will not teach him that. So if he knows who he is and he knows what the system is, he's halfway home. Now, the third piece, though, is important. He's got to remember, you said he plays ball. Whether he plays ball at Auburn or not, let's be clear, he needs to understand he should never assume that white Alabama or white America places more value on their humanity than on their skin color. Because if he assumes that, and if he assumes that white folks will cheer a ball player and that somehow that makes it all good, yeah, that's true until you speak up about your actual life, like those Rams players who put their hands up, and now they're getting death threats from Rams fans.
Wow.
Right? So white folks love ball. We love to watch black folks play gladiator and make us money and entertain us. And that has always been the case. But that does not mean that we are prepared to put aside what actually pays the bills, and that is a system of privilege and domination. As long as he's clear on that, he's going to be fine.
Wow.
But if he lets down his guard on any of that, it's dangerous.
Wow.
Brian?
Tim, I want to take you back to, you alluded to the repair and the reparations movement under Senate Bill H.R. 40. Have you looked at that, and do you have any recommendations for us to move that forward?
Well, first off, I think it's important. A lot of Americans don't realize about this bill that was introduced by Representative Conyers every year for however long it's been, and it never even gets out of committee, which tells us a lot, because, at least get it out of committee, right? This is the thing, white America doesn't want to deal with this to the point that we don't want to get that bill out of committee, even just to defeat it. We don't even want to have a hearing on it. Just like we don't want to have a trial for Darren Wilson. No, we can't even let that get out of the grand jury. We have to squash that at the outset. So, number one, let's be clear about the history. Secondly, I think what we have to talk about, and I think most of the reparations movement has done this, but I don't think a lot of folks have heard this. The reparations movement is not just about white folks taking out our checkbook and writing a check to black people every month right after the water bill. I think that's what white folks hear. They hear that, they're like, wait a minute, I got an electric bill and a cable bill, and then I got my black people check. That's not what reparations is. Reparations is systemic institutional repair by the United States government, because it was the government that ingrained and enshrined the mistreatment. It wasn't individual white people and their families. It was the government of the United States.
They ain't gonna come take my truck because my nigger bill's late.
What?
God damn it, Martha, you forgot to pay the nigger bill and take the truck. Shit.
Right. We gotta talk about this systemically and institutionally, just like, and the way I try to equate it for white folks in particular who get uptight about the concept is, think about, we basically created in the 1930s a huge government program that was almost exclusively for white people, the FHA loan program for housing loans that people of color were cut off from. It built the white middle class. Without the FHA, which pumped $120 billion worth of housing equity into white hands in the first 20 years or so, without that, there is no white middle class. Without those programs, that community, Levittown, that Bill O'Reilly grew up on, on Long Island that he says he never got white privilege. Well, he got a loan and lived in a community where only white people could live. That built the white middle class. So we already did institutional investment for white folks. All reparations is saying is we need to do the same thing for people who have been excluded from that historically. And if we think of it in those terms, rather than just sort of like payback for slavery or whatever, and if we think of it systemically rather than individually, then I think we can move the ball forward on this thing.
Okay. Wow. Real quickly, what are you doing to move it forward?
Well, I talk about it a lot, and I've written about it, I've spoken about it. I try to use my voice as an educator to talk about the importance of systemic and institutional repair. And I'm not going to say that I've had a whole lot of success in persuading large swaths of white America or anyone else to listen to that. But my sense of it is I'm encouraging white folks to explore that. I'm encouraging them to think about their own stake in making repair and compensation, but more than just an empty apology, actually pushing for those kinds of institutional policies, a domestic Marshall Plan, those kinds of investments that were excluded from people of color for all of those years, and really try to make that central to those politicians that we elect. If they're not prepared to talk about those subjects and move forward on those things, then we withhold our support for them.
Tim, we have a young man in the studio right now. He's only 24 years old. He's a graduate from the University of Howard University, HBCU. He's here. He's an exceptional young man. He was brought in by our good friend, Dr. Mark Goulston. He has a question for you. His name is Derek Carrington. Hit it.
Hello, Tim. My question is, how have you communicated your message with your family about the conversation that we've about our conversation? Let me preface that question because blacks can come together. Blacks have come together in the past. A great example of that is in the 20s, Black Wall Street. And, blacks can, Black Wall Street, money was in the community, but the outside community of whites killed everyone. Okay.
They bombed it.
They bombed it. That was the first bombing.
So now blacks only have 13.2% of influence in the community, but most of the population of black community is in jail. So my question is, blacks cannot do it alone. There has to be a white counterpart. So how have you communicated your message to your family to change their mindset?
Well, I've been very lucky in the sense that my family, both the older folk in my family and then my immediate family, my children, my wife, are people that I don't have to spend a lot of time persuading because my family, very different than, let's say, probably most white families, is made up of people who already, A, they're implicated in who I am and what I do. They actually made me who I am. And then B, those who are now my family share those same values. But what I do with white folks generally is to talk about our responsibility to deal accountably with our privilege and with my own children, right, who are 13 and 11 and their heads are being filled with all kinds of things every day by media, within their schools, by their peers. And so what we try to do, I try to have conversations with them pretty regularly about race, about privilege, about inequality. And I would say that for young children, they have a pretty good beat on it. But again, they have an advantage, right? They have me as a dad. I'm somebody who does this all the time. So they're aware of that. We talk about it. I try to make sure that other parents also have those tools. I do a lot of conversations with high school students and their parents, middle school students and their parents, to try to get them to think about how they, who maybe don't come from a family like mine and therefore don't have the toolkit for having those discussions, can still have those discussions.
Listen, we got to take a quick break. When we come back, we got more questions for you, Tim. I hope you can hang on with us. I just want to say this. When we come back, we're going to speak with Veronica Conway. She is the co-creator of this show. She is responsible for bringing in Brother Tim Wise to speak to us today, and I'm so appreciative to Veronica Conway. We're going to come back and get a woman's point of view. Listen, if you want free coaching strategy sessions with me, go to my email, zowhatorders@gmail.com. I'll get those email, and I'll contact you and set up a time where you and I can talk, and we can set up a coaching strategy session. It'll be about 90 minutes. You want to talk to me about what you want to do? zowhatorders@gmail.com. I'll be back in 2.2 seconds. Zo What Mornings is killing!
White people love to feel good about themselves by feeling bad about being white. He's right. For a lot of white people, especially academic types, nothing makes them feel more virtuous than apologizing for being white. You see, it automatically makes you a good white person if you apologize for the sins of other white people who, unlike you, are bad, racist white people. The trouble is, there aren't enough of those bad white people to account for how awful things are for blacks. Did Richard Nixon really somehow make black people go out and shoot each other? Do Tea Partiers force black teenagers to get pregnant? That's too irrational for even the most crazed liberals. So that's why they invented institutional racism. That's how you explain black and now Hispanic failure when you can't point to real, live, breathing, drooling white people who are trampling on blacks. Institutions somehow keep down the non-whites. But institutional racism just isn't satisfying. You can't feel genuinely bad about being white if the problem is institutions. That's just too abstract. Thank goodness, back in 1988, a woman named Peggy McIntosh discovered a far more satisfying and personal way to feel bad about being white. It's called white privilege, or white skin privilege. What you see on the screen is a graph of how often the words institutional racism and white privilege occurred in books over the years. As you can see, institutional racism has been around since about 1965. White privilege didn't catch on until about 1990, but has clearly pulled ahead.
Sociologists of a variety of types would call this structural racism. It doesn't have the language of, say, 1940s racism or bigotry or personal attitudes. You can, in fact, have a lot of friends of color and benefit dramatically from structural racism. Right? I mean, sorry. That's how it goes. Didn't know I was going to be able to find a joke in this one today. This wasn't feeling funny when I was thinking about it. So what happens under structural racism is that we have a new set of circumstances that happen seemingly invisibly, right? So we can't explain the rage of the community there because it looks crazy, right? It looks, what are they so worked up about? We have laws that protect people. This is one bad guy. If we can just get him in jail or get him off the force or put him on admin leave or do some kind of crazy thing for this one, we'll be cool. Because all the laws are set up and we don't know very many people who harbor explicit racialized hatred attitudes, right? This is the world in which we have created, as Bonilla Silva might call it, the sociologist from Duke, racism without racists.
Wow. True or false? Racism. Michael Vick's dogs got more justice than Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Oscar Grant, Eric Garner, and countless of other black men. Right? They got more. The dogs got a damn TV show where they got rescued, where they were saved. Who is the black man's savior in America? The obvious answer is himself. But it can't be himself unless he fixes himself. Because the black man is broken, right? Can we agree? Can we agree to some extent that, and this is probably, you could say, universally of all men. The really fine, exceptional men are in the minority. And there's a lot of average guys, and then the really crazed wackos, there are a few of them, right? If we're judging it on the bell curve. But I like what Frederick Douglass said. It's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. I'm asking my august panel, how can we move forward with tips for young African American men so we could produce some like this brother right here, right? Where you get to be unapologetically black, male, and alpha without fear of retribution. Because remember, part of black success in America is living up to a standard that you didn't create, right? A standard of success that you didn't create, right? And part of achieving that, there's a sense of pretense. You can't really say how you feel because you might offend somebody on your way up, which prevents your ascent. We've got Veronica Conway on the line right now. Veronica! Talk to us. Thank you for holding on so long. Say hello to your good friend Tim Wise. He's with us right now.
Hey, Tim Wise, it's great to have you here, and it's an honor to meet you. And I want to address what you're saying, Joe, in just a minute. But before I go there, I would just love to hear it from Tim, because I think Tim travels the country and talks to meets a lot of white denial and white amnesia. I think it's hard to do it in this moment because of the inciting incident called Ferguson. It's hard to maintain that denial. But I would say prior to Ferguson, you know, you talk to white folks and they'd act like they had no idea what you were talking about. So can you speak a little bit to that and how that's wired and what that is, Tim? Because I know you run into it a lot.
Well, I think what it is, and I'm not the first to think of this analogy, but I have found it to be helpful. You know, if you think about that movie, The Matrix, right? There's that scene early on in the film. It's the central setup to the story, where Morpheus offers Neo the 2 pills, one blue, one red. He can take the blue pill and go back to sleep and not know what's really happening. And as Lawrence Fishburne tells Keanu Reeves, hey, that's what everybody else is doing. Go ahead, take the blue pill, and you can be ignorant, you can be oblivious just like them. Or, he says, you can take the red pill, and I can take you down the rabbit hole and show you how deep it goes, and you can have enlightenment. And just as Neo takes the red pill, and all of a sudden he starts to see things that were always happening, but which he had never seen before because he'd had no need to see them, and he had been taking the blue pill. I would say that in a sense, that's a perfect metaphor for race, because white America, and this is true of any, by the way, any society, the dominant group is taking the blue pill. The dominant group is pretty much hooked up to an IV drip with the blue pill.
Wow. You're going to have to repeat that.
No, leave him alone. Let him roll. Let him finish.
The target has to take the red pill just to figure out what the hell is happening.
Wow.
Right? And so I think the denial comes from a system that subsidizes our ignorance. It's not just that we're on the IV drip. It's given free to us. We don't have to pay for that. That is a constant thing. And so we look around, we're like, racism, what? And then black and brown folks are like, yeah, really, don't you see the racism? Because they took the red pill. We're like, no. And I think men are the same with sexism, right? Men have the luxury of, and I know like men taking the blue pill means some different stuff now. I realize that.
Right.
I mean, men can take the blue pill that keeps us ignorant about sexism, rape culture, misogyny, patriarchy. Straight folk can do the same thing that our LGBT brothers and sisters cannot. Able-bodied people, just being able-bodied means I can take the blue pill and be completely oblivious to what my disabled brothers and sisters deal with, just trying to get around in this society. So it's nothing to feel bad or guilty about, but it is something to say, damn, at some point you have to take the red pill so you can wake up to the society in which you live.
Wow.
Dude, when are you, Tim? When are you coming anywhere near LA to speak?
I'm gonna get out that way in January, actually, end of the month.
We are there. We're there, man. We're gonna support you. We're gonna come in like a gang of Crips. No, I'm just kidding. No, hey, Bobby Glanton has a question for you, and then I want to come back to Veronica. Veronica, stay with us.
Tim, you grew up in Nashville, and as it relates to the question and the construct about children and broken men, conditioning, how important is it going forward to educate our children differently about race and culture?
I think it's very important, and I think it's important not to rely on the existing schools and school systems to do a good job of it. I'm all for trying to get them to do better. I mean, I'm all for trying to get different curriculum and different teacher training, but I think at some point we got to know that the schools were set up to perpetuate existing systems of power. So it'd be like if you have a factory and the factory's purpose is to turn out chicken nuggets. Don't be waiting at the end of the conveyor belt looking for hot dogs.
Thank you. Thank you.
That is so true.
So if the schools were set up not for liberation of the oppressed, whether it's racially, economically, or anything else, then don't expect them to liberate. What I always say to folks is, listen, like out in Tucson, they had a recent, the ethnic studies program in Tucson, Unified School District, was eliminated by a bunch of racists in the state legislature several years ago. And those Latino and Latina brothers and sisters who have been fighting to get that reinstated are doing a great thing. But what they're also doing is making sure that until that program is reinstated, they're not waiting for the program. They're doing that stuff on their own. They're having their mentors and their people in the community teach those classes. So we can have weekend classes. We can have classes at community centers. We can have classes at churches and mosques and synagogues and get people together and say, we're not going to wait for the teachers who weren't taught this stuff either to teach it to our children. We're going to teach it. And we're going to make sure that they know the truth so that they can move forward.
Tim, I got a hard question, Doc. I'm a huge fan of your work and what you speak of, but earlier you spoke on a bill that never makes it out of committee. And my question to you, and think about it, and I'd like your answer after we come back from the break. With what we all know and with what you know firsthand about this system of government, about the hundreds of years that it has been in place and the way this machine is doing its thing and will not turn or stop on a dime, how much faith do you have in a systematic change as opposed to a global mental black shift in mindset? Just give that, again, the question in ghetto terms. Which one do you think gonna happen first? Black folks get their shit together, or white folks make it easier for black folks? And we want that answer from you after we come back from the break.
We're in a black-owned company. In other words, it's a minority-based company. Most of my employees are black or Hispanic, and I deliberately started that years ago because of the unfortunate dilemma of minorities in the workforce and in the entertainment field, where blacks generate billions of dollars. We don't often get the opportunity to reap the benefits from that money that we generate. And considering that I generate part of that billion, I'm going to take it back to the community that put me here in the first place. It's very important to me. It makes sense. It's like adding one and one together. It makes two. Well, if the community put me out here, I've got to bring the community where I am. It's that simple. And it makes so much sense to me. I don't understand why others don't do it more often.
Well, I was going to ask you that. Why don't you think they are?
I have not asked any other black artists. I don't know. I have witnessed.
Wow, you're on the line. We're on the line right now. Right, we're live, and you're on the phone.
Shout out to James Broadway. Oh my God.
That was the late great Phyllis Hyman.
Yeah,
incredible beauty. A lot of people don't know the mind behind the artistry.
Yeah.
And she was talking, recycling of black dollars way back when, right? I mean,
it's the only answer.
This show is amazing, man. I'm blown away, and I'm in awe, of the guests we have, the people we have at the table, week in and week out. I hope that we're affecting some kind of change with this show. I mean, because we damn sure ain't getting rich off of it. That's number one, right? And number two, we're not trying to upset anybody, but we are trying to turn over some apple carts in the mind, right? That's why we bring on people like Tim Wise, Veronica Conway, Bobby Glanton-Smith, Bryan Franklin, Dr. Mark Goulston, Geoff Brown, and of course, Derek Carrington. We bring on these folks because we want to affect your mind. Gil Scott-Heron said the revolution happens where, Bobby?
It will not be televised.
That's because it's in the mind.
Is Tim still on?
Yes.
Yeah. Quick.
Bobby couldn't wait till I finished, but go ahead, Bobby. Go ahead.
I had a question in front of you.
I got a question in front of you. You got it, Bobby. Go ahead now, Uncle Bobby.
So, Tim, in your estimation, what is the proportion of white people who share your point of view, and is it growing or lessening in 2014?
I'm not sure, how to estimate it. I would say, I meet a lot of young white folks who I think are coming to an awareness and a consciousness that I did not see as prevalent, let's say 15 and 20 years ago. So I think there is some movement. But if I had to guess, I would still say, it's probably 20% who are at that place, 15 to 20% who are really prepared, not just to tweet an article or put something up on the Facebook wall, but actually go out and talk to other people about it, challenge their friends. And it may be that 15 to 20% down the line may be a sufficient number when it comes to trying to move the society forward. Because if folks of color are together and clear, to add 15 to 20% of that other half of the population that's going to be white folks can be a workable justice majority. But that's going to take some work to maintain that. Now, going back to the question that was on the table before, right, about what I think is going to happen first. I think I'm never going to be, even though I try to remain optimistic about the possibility of white folks gathering together to eradicate white supremacy, I wouldn't put my money on it. Right. And if I had to bet, if it were roulette in this case, given your scenario, I would bet on black. That is to say that I would bet that folks of color are more likely to figure out the riddle about how to bring that system down or seriously minimize its impact before I would bet on white folks to just go, OK, we're done with that white supremacy thing. That was fun, but we're finished. Right. So I think in a sense, if I had to say which comes first, I think black and brown folk coming together to figure out solution is more likely. I hope, however, that there will be a number of a critical mass of white allies who will join with that effort to make it happen quicker.
Dr. G?
Jim, I have a comment or question, maybe both. I think what's going to, my view is that what's going to happen is that there's a saying, sunlight is the greatest disinfectant. Supreme Court Justice said that. And I think the internet has the possibility to both bring out transparency and community. And I think it's just a matter of time before the millennials and the next generation jettison the people older than them to say, we're not going to buy into your crap, because if we buy into it to become as happy as you've become, we don't think you're so happy. So I think what's happening, and I think the real reason for Google and Facebook is not to increase transactions, it's to connect the world and show that the emperors have no clothes, and that the millennial generation, the next generation, have the potential to connect to each other more equitably and in a more humane way. The question is, the 15 years that it's predicted that Moore's Law will no longer be happening. And Moore's Law is that technology doubles its speed and doubles its lessening of cost every 18 months. And it's predicted by Ray Kurzweil, a futurist, that will go away in the 2020s. It's still a long wait given what we have to endure. But I'm hopeful about the next generations to scratch their head, especially when they're coming from broken homes and they're all over the place saying, I don't know if I want to believe my mother, my father, my grandparents. I think I'm going to check with my peers.
Right.
But the next 10 years could still be rocky.
Wow. No, I think that's true.
Wow.
That's definitely true. I try to remain healthily skeptical about the over-reliance on technology, because I realize that the key to real positive social change is still relationship building, one-to-one, hand-in-hand, door-to-door in the community. However, what I am seeing the last few years, my cynicism about the use of technology to connect people has diminished, because I've seen the way that young people in particular, and let's just think about in the wake of Ferguson, in the wake of Eric Garner and Staten Island, the way that young people were able to coordinate in a very decentralized kind of way, coordinate these protests, the vast majority of which have been incredibly nonviolent and productive and creative. And you got folks mimicking tactics all over the country who don't even know each other. And that could not have happened 20 years ago. That could not have happened 50 years ago in the same way. You had to wait till the paper came out, and then you're like, oh, look what those guys in Greensboro did. Maybe we ought to do that in a couple of weeks. Now, we know that in the sit-in movement, that worked, but think about how much more rapidly we can build with the use of technology and connecting people. So I agree with you. The only downside is with technology, we still, the other side, that is to say the overtly racist side, they got the same technology.
Okay.
Right?
Wow.
And they're spreading the same technology, and they're spreading their videos, and they're spreading their poison. So we have to be prepared to deal with their stuff, because it's not like we're the only ones who have the material,
Great.
Tim, okay, I came up with this while I was high, so we might have to run this through that filter.
Hurry up, Geoff.
But what do you think would happen if on a grand level, just for this Christmas, black folks financially said, we're going to sit this one out? If we just said, fuck Santa Claus till we get some justice.
Right. And I mean across the board.
Yeah.
NBA, no games, college, no football, NFL, no playoffs.
We're going to sit out. We're going to sit out. And I don't know, yeah, that's nice, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about December 25th.
All of it.
December 25th, I'm not buying a Christmas ball. I ain't buying no garland. I ain't buying no toys. I ain't buying no gifts because I don't have no justice. What do you think would be the impact of such a thing?
Oh, it would be huge. I mean, if you just look just this right after Thanksgiving, right, there was a nationwide boycott called for Black Friday, which we still haven't quite figured out what the impact of it was, but we do know that sales were down by like 11%. I don't believe that was just the economy, because the economy's starting to get slowly better. I have to assume that had some impact. So now if you magnify that out and you talk about a day or a week where folks just didn't spend any dough at all, or at least not with white-owned businesses, maybe they spent that money in their own. I think it would have a huge impact. And if you go back, you think about, there was that film several years ago that was sort of parallel to that documentary, Day Without a Mexican, right? You look at that film and the way that they talked about what would happen if all the Chicano and Chicana brothers and sisters and the Mexican-American folk in this country, or some of whom are documented, some of whom are undocumented, just didn't show up for work in white folks' homes. Oh, hell, that would be huge, because just the amount of labor that is done at the lower end of the income spectrum by working class Chicano and Chicana folks, to say nothing of Mexican Americans that are more affluent, is huge to the economy. So although I don't necessarily know that it would change things overnight, I do know that the impact of that would be impossible to ignore, and it would confront white America with the reality that black and brown folks do a lot more monetarily for us than we have ever done for them.
Wow, we got to take a quick break, man. This show is changing lives if you're paying attention, man. T-Radio V, So What Mornings, every Monday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's getting crazy. We'll be back shortly with final thoughts. Ladies and gentlemen, as is commonplace, I'd like to get into my final thought to summarize everything that went on. First, I want to thank everybody: Bryan Franklin, Mark Goulston, Tim Wise, Jim Brown, of course, my uncle Bobby Glanton-Smith, Geoff Brown, and this brother Derek Carrington, 24-year-old. I just got to say this. One thing white people can't do is make us love, forgive, and respect ourselves again. It's one thing white people can't do. See, I've always said, we're so wounded and traumatized that we don't have space to be human with each other. I'm talking about black folk. We exact power in revenge on each other because we can exact revenge on the system. So there's no room for forgiveness. If we hurt each other, we enemies, right? Let's just be honest, right? So I would say one thing white people can't do is make us love, forgive, and respect ourselves. If we really want to survive, or if we want to live, fuck surviving. If we want to live, we as black people have to renounce our devotional love to the religion of drapetomania. It's a lot of Stevens from Django in our religion. It's a whole lot of them. Consider this, Charles Barkley. Remember when you threw that dude through the window? You said, I hope you die. But then years later, you'll come out and say, we need profiling in our community because of the scumbags and the hoodlums. Well, if it wasn't for basketball, you would be, by way of your behavior, a scumbag and a hoodlum. See, a lot of people are calling Charles Barkley an Uncle Tom. First off, read the book, Briar Rabbit. He ain't an Uncle Tom, he's a Sambo. Uncle Tom was the hero. Sambo was the Stephen from Django in that. Well, I have an acronym for that, Sambo. Some African men always bow to their oppressors. Sambo. Some African men always bow to their oppressors. To me, Charles Barkley is a Sambo. I don't mind saying it. The fact that he didn't understand or couldn't reference MLK when he said, a riot is the voice of the unheard. Why are you people out there tearing up your own stuff? Because there's no way else to express the frustration, the anger, everything that's happening. You have succeeded according to the definition of what success is in America, and now you sit in judgment of where you came from? The devil is a liar. Success for the African American man within a white supremacist system requires some level of pretense. Go along to get along. Don't rock the boat. Or, as the late, great James Hanna said, quiet acquiescence in the face of blatant disrespect. And then we'll label that we're civilized. Or that's what a civilized man. Barack Obama, Tim Wise wrote a book called In Between Barack and a Hard Place. Go get the book. Barack Obama is the first president in American history to not be able to respond to indignation because of a stereotype. Soon as he goes off on somebody, there it is, the angry black man. That's the first president in history that has to monitor his responses because he's black. And then you got niggas. I'm going to say it. I'm not afraid of the word. We can have a debate and a discussion on it. We got niggas. Because you're going to be niggas as long as you fucking try to buttress up a system that is inherently racist. Institutional racist. You got niggas running around trying to buttress it up, trying to support it, trying to help it along. Right? Oh, you know, the system ain't that bad. All you got to do is pull up by your bootstraps until your ass gets pulled over by the cops. Until you lose a family member to police brutality. Then you want advocacy groups. Until it happens to you, right? It's a hurtful thing to go through, man. We've got children growing up in fear. Remember last week we had King Na? 9 years old, came on and said, listen, I don't feel protected in this society. So that means young African-American men are growing up with fear as a personal advisor. As a visor. Hey, don't say that. Oop, don't do that. Watch who's watching you. Right? If we don't turn it around, both on the white side and the black side, black people, renounce the narrative of success and write your own. White people, check other white folk for being blatantly bigots and racist. That's the only way it's going to turn around. Thank you, Jon Stewart. Thank you, Tim Wise. Thank you, Dr. G. We need more of that. And for the ignorant niggas out there who say, oh, it ain't predicated on what white people do. Listen, we're human beings. And it's ideological differences that create war on planet Earth. We all got to rewrite the narrative. I'm trying to get people to see that, man. Young brothers, prioritize, focus, and follow through, as Dr. G said. Prioritize, focus, and follow through. Black people, heal the wounds in your own community. If 93% of the crimes that are happening amongst black people are to black people, then we got to heal that. Let's not worry about the 82% or the 80-some% of white-on-white crime. Let's not worry about that. Let's worry about why we killing each other. Right? Success is a narrative that you write. Now, if you're not writing your own success narrative, you're a slave still. I'm Zoe Williams, and that's my final thought. Tim Wise.
Yes.
Man, where can they purchase all of your books? Please tell us where my fans can follow you, support you, and buy those works.
The website is www.timwise.org. Twitter is @TimJacobWise. You can go on the website, though, and there are links to all the books. and to the videos that are available. I have a new book out in a couple of months, Culture of Cruelty. That'll be out by February, and that'll be on the site also.
Wow. Hey, man, I so appreciate you for taking out the time to participate with us. And we hope in the near future, man, you can come back and weigh in as much as you want, man. I really hope that you'll come back.
I'll let y'all know when I'm in L.A.
Thank you, brother. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Tim.
Now, Bobby G, Real Men Don't Play. Where can they get it?
At www.realmendon'tplay, and I'd like to thank the brother that is on the face of my book, Jim Brown, for taking time out of his schedule to share with you why he lives by our mantra of the responsibility of self-determination.
Love it, love it, love it. Bryan Franklin.
Yes, sir. Tonight, webinar. You can find it if you're a Facebook user at blackmonday.biz. Thank you for going to blackmonday.biz last week by the hundreds.
By the thousands.
Yeah, 1.5. So now the key is the actions that we take, and you can learn more about why we do what we do. Go to blackmonday.biz. There's information on Facebook about the event tonight at 7 p.m. Pacific time.
Wow, good stuff. Dr. G.
Here's something we all need to do, but none of us want to do. Go check out my book, Just Listen. It's the top book on listening in the world, but nobody knows about it.
Wow.
Because people don't want to listen.
Wow, 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 wow. Geoff
Brown, ringtones.
Ignorant.
Yes, go get my ignorant ringtones. MYXER tones.com, mixer.com.
My good friend, Derek Carrington, from where? Detroit, graduate of the Bisons, Black College, HBCU in the building. Where can they find you, man?
ElevateYourLife.net.
He remembered his website earlier. He was like, .com, .net? ElevateYourLife.net. I love it, I love it, I love it. And I'm going to tell you right now, go to my website, I am Zoe Williams. If you want a free coaching strategy session with me, at ZoeWhatOrders@gmail.com. Let's get some coaching going. We got a lot of resources. Veronica Conway is on my team. We got a whole bunch of people that can weigh in on how to get your life on track. I want to extend this offer to you guys now. ZoeWhat free coaching strategy sessions. Just go there at ZoeWhatOrders@gmail.com. Also go to CD Baby and get my lecture on God. CD Baby, the CD is called Street Scholar, the God Class Volume 1. Go there right now. Go to IamZoeWilliams.com. There I have t-shirts, I have all kind of stuff. Like I said, I only have 59 t-shirts remaining. So if you want to participate, hit me up, let me know what size you wear, and I'll get it out to you ASAP. We have 59 shirts left. Please get at us. Support black businesses. Support WeJuice.com. Support ViaSkinScience.com. Support PharaonicDesigns.com. Support AriseHospitality.com. Support RamoMart.com. Support black businesses, period. I'm ZoeWhat. That's it for us this week, and we'll see you next year. Holla! Deuces!